depends on the person. I mean, again,
Hmm.
I mean, one thing that we've noticed is like if people are trying to get money and like their
Hmm.
objective is just to get rich, doesn't work very well in agriculture. I mean, it's a
Mm.
slow business, it's
Yep.
very, very, very painstaking, and so if their
Yep.
objective from the get-go is to make money, I mean, they're not gonna go far. Hi, my name is Sepehr Achard, and you're listening to the Africa for Dummies podcast.
I am an African.
Yep. So welcome back to Africa for Dummies. Today we're joined by Sepehr Achard, COO of iGrow News, a leading platform in the agri-food tech space. We'll be talking about the state of Agri-Tech in Africa, why some startups scale, why others stall, and what it really takes to succeed in this fast-changing space. Sepehr, great to have you on the podcast. So, yeah. Uh, Yeah. So let's start with your journey. How did you find your way into the agri-tech space, and what led you to your current role at iGrow News?
Well, let's just say it was just an opportunity that arose once.
Hmm.
I was previously working in finance, so nothing to do
Okay.
with agriculture.
Yeah.
And during my last year at university, I met a guy, actually the creator of the brand iGrow News,
Hmm.
Herbert Kligerman. And we kept in touch. And after 6 months of me working in finance, I just decided it was time to. I just decided that finance wasn't for me,
Hmm.
and I wanted something a bit more meaningful, perhaps.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
other than
Yeah.
just dealing with numbers and so on.
Hmm.
And I decided to work with him to create a platform where people could find unbiased news.
Hmm.
Uh, and at the time, he had this blog focusing on new technologies, especially
Hmm.
in urban farming, not necessarily in agriculture. So we got together, we created the platform, we little by little expanded beyond urban farming to other technologies in agriculture and today to any technologies in agriculture. And since December 2023, I also merged with the Vertical Farming Podcast with my
Hmm.
associate Harry Duran to create Agtech Media Group. And so
Okay.
Agtech Media Group is the company behind the brand iGrow News.
Okay. Okay. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and the rest is history. And now we're
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really interesting transition actually from finance to agriculture. Was there any how can I say shocks, I guess, like there's culture shocks, but maybe in terms of like work styles, because I know the finance industry is completely different as opposed to the agriculture sector. Were there any like shocks that maybe you were like, huh, this isn't
Hmm.
this is new? Yeah.
Um, Not necessarily shocks, I would
Hmm.
say. There are some things that intrigued me
Hmm.
to some regards. For instance, I mean, I guess I was like pretty much every single person when we talk about agriculture is I wasn't that aware that there was this much technology involved in a farm.
Hmm.
When you talk to people, a lot of people still think that agriculture is a very old way, and
Hmm. Hmm.
it's people with strong accents and at an old
Yeah.
age that are
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
it. But it's actually not the case. It's absolutely not the case. I mean, you still have
Hmm.
people with strong accent, but
Yeah.
uh, they're using high tech. Like if you
Yeah.
compare a modern tractor, it's
Yeah.
as technologically advanced as a Tesla today.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get
Yeah.
satellite positioning, you get all these,
Machine
all,
learning now.
yeah, machine
Yeah.
learning, AI
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
used in the day-to-day farm today.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's perhaps the thing that not shocked me, but like I was surprised by it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I definitely would agree as well because I think for me as well, kind of a similar transition that you made because I study agriculture economics,
Mhm.
and I found a way to get into, like, there's a department at my University of Agriculture Engineering, and when I saw what they were doing, it's really, really interesting. You're looking at trying to detect weeds and
Yeah.
all these sorts of thing where you're calculating the speed of the tractor. It's really fascinating. But I think if we switch to, I guess, the more of, in a situation in Africa, from your vantage point, what are some of the most exciting or impactful agri-tech innovations you're seeing across Africa right now, and what trends should entrepreneurs be paying close attention to?
That's a good question. I mean, the thing is that Africa is such a big continent that
Sure.
it's not the same in North Africa than it is in South Africa
Southern
or
Africa.
in
Yeah,
Africa
yeah,
or in East
yeah.
Africa. So it's hard to really cherry pick one trend or one tech.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say all the new precision agriculture tools
Mm-hmm.
that are used to, smart irrigation systems,
Mm-hmm.
satellite imagery in some countries, that are used to monitor hydration levels throughout the
Mm-hmm.
field. Drone use as well is quite interesting. And yeah, I mean, beyond the AI and all the machine learning trends,
Yeah.
that's something that we see across all industries, not just
Yes.
agriculture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there are also some innovations specifically regards to biochar.
Okay.
Um, so biochar, I mean, it's not an innovation, it's an old way, it's an old product that was used for many, many years, but hundreds or even thousands of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
in agriculture. And today it's being reincorporated as a potential fertilizer or as a way to grow sustainably.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there are several projects in Kenya as well, to produce biochar. And yeah, that's something that is quite interesting.
Oh, that's actually really interesting. I think when you're speaking, it sort of reminded me of something I read in a paper once, which said that the future of agriculture is actually in data, and it call it, I think, data, and I forget the word, but and not so much in, trying to improve, like, sort of primary production, sort of things like fertilizers and things like that. Would you agree with that statement?
To a certain extent, yes. Now, there
Mm-hmm.
are some limitations to data, in my opinion, is it depends what you're going to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have data but no action items to follow,
Mm-hmm.
it's useless.
Yeah.
You're not gonna make it I mean, you'd be better off not even knowing that that data exists.
Yeah.
And that's perhaps one issue that a lot of startups in the industry have faced is they incorporate all this cool technology, but again, it needs to solve an issue. It needs to solve an
Mm-hmm.
issue at farm level,
Mm-hmm.
and for your end user. And many companies that have went bankrupt over the years and over the past few weeks, for instance, they've developed cool technologies. I mean, some of these technologies are absolutely fantastic. I mean, harvesting apples, but with robots and things like
Mm-hmm.
this. But like, is it is it fit for the market? No.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not fast enough compared to labor. It's not accurate enough compared to your traditional labor. And so that's an issue that a lot of startups either misunderstand or perhaps over not under consider.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's that's something that a lot of startups face. And it's not just about data, it's also about solving problems and solving issues
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day. And a lot of people, including me, before getting in this industry, we never think of agriculture as a business, whereas agriculture is maybe the most capitalistic business there is on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, if you're not making money, you're
Sure.
gonna be soon out of business, and it's
Yeah.
ruthless.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and if farmers see that your technology has a potential and has and answers some of their problems, I can guarantee you they're gonna be quick to adopt it.
Yeah.
Uh, they're slow to adopt technologies that are not useful.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that's something that I've talked about with a recent interview I made with
Mm-hmm.
Lucas Koch, who's the CEO of Kelly Hill's Unmanned Systems. Shout out to him. And yeah, that's what he was saying.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. And actually, a bit of a shameless plug here, but me and my friends also are trying to do a startup in Zambia because farmers are struggling with cattle theft, and so we're
Mhm.
trying to use IoT to see if we can help farmers identify, locate their animals
Yeah.
in case of any thefts and things like that. But one big challenge that we have faced is that yes, we've found a I think because we first had to talk to a lot of farmers who told us about the situation, how these thefts occur, and we've learned quite a lot in that regard. However, one big challenge is the infrastructure. Like it is, it's so difficult to, something that in Europe is already like, they're already like way, way past certain things. I think with regards to like IoT, but for those who don't know, IoT means Internet of Things. So it's basically where devices can communicate to each other through the internet. Um, Even that is still very like complex for like 4G networks and such things. In so would you say that like the infrastructure is also a huge challenge? And have you seen any companies that have overcome that? I guess I could say.
Overcome in Africa or?
Yeah, yeah, or yeah, mainly, yeah, 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 yeah.
So I mean, I talk to many companies that receive project inquiries
Mm-hmm.
for Africa, but yeah, I mean, one common problem they say is the lack of infrastructure around it,
Mm-hmm.
especially with regards to internet. I mean, today, I mean, most of these technologies rely on internet or at least some
Mm-hmm.
sort of connection to operate. So yeah, that's one big issue. Now, there are some companies that have overcome, I mean, not companies, but perhaps projects
Mm-hmm.
that overcome that issue by adopting mid-tech solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't remember the name, but I guess it was in Ghana
Okay.
or in Congo, somewhere there.
Okay.
Uh, but instead of adopting tech internet reliant technologies, they've adopted just mid-tech
Okay.
solutions, or at least solutions that were semi-automated, so that
Okay.
they could automate some parts of their production and not rely on internet. So that's how they overcome. But again, even if today you have like solutions that you could use, like Starlink, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
that you could connect, it's still very expensive. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's not suitable for farm operations or for most farm operations today. But that's yeah, that's something that where I think governments need to invest
Yeah.
in to have more connectivity and connection solutions offered also to remote areas because
Mm-hmm.
if you go into cities, there's no problem in getting internet
Yep.
or
Yeah.
Wi-Fi or 5G or even yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you go into rural areas where there is the
Mm-hmm.
farms where it
Yeah.
gets complicated and tricky. And so yeah, that's where I believe there needs to be a bit more investments made by governments.
Oh, okay. That's yeah. I think the example that you gave of Ghana is also a really great idea of trying to basically utilize the tools that you have on hand
Yeah.
and basically the limitations. So I think that's a great point. And moving on to another challenge that we have, which is I think a common challenge we hear about African agri-tech startups is that they solve very specific local problems, and hence they struggle to grow beyond that niche. Why do you think that is, and what separates businesses that manage to scale successfully from those and those that plateau?
What do you call specific local problems?
I think that from what I saw and from the discussions I've had, it seems like they are. Hmm, that's actually a really good question. Because I was going to say that there could be very country specific issues that
Mm.
maybe don't exist in every other country. Hence, it doesn't really spread that much. But I can't think of a specific example on hand. But I would you agree with that statement, or would you say that most of these innovations are trying to
I mean,
would should be easy to scale? I think.
I think it needs to be nuanced because
Okay.
companies or startups that are targeting very specific or at least a niche is
Mm-hmm.
actually a good thing. And that's something that has been perhaps lacking in Europe or in the US,
Mm-hmm.
where they started off spreading everywhere and using this capital intensive model, and then ended up, yeah, not knowing what their product was, essentially what their core business was. And so targeting a niche to start with is actually a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess that again, I mean, Africa is such a big, it's such a big
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
and
True.
some of
Yeah.
these countries are huge. People don't realize that, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
US or in Europe. And so even if you target a very specific problem, it could be just enough for your business to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now I guess that where it can, where you, I mean, where the question
Lead.
wants to address
Uh,
is how some of these companies, for instance, address a problem in Nigeria, but also can address other problems in neighboring countries. I guess that
mm-hmm.
that's what
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to figure out. And I think that that's, yeah, again, it all depends on the problem and the solution and the technology they adopt. If you're targeting a very specific pest that is only present in a handful of countries, maybe you could shift and make your model to find that the cure to that pest,
Mm-hmm.
um, so that you can easily replicate the same model in other countries or for other pests as well.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that could be adopted, but again, for me, it's not specifically an issue for targeting niche. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a big issue.
Okay, as long as maybe the niche is able to sustain that business,
Yeah,
of course. Yeah,
yeah,
of
of course.
course. Yeah, 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 yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. And also, I think there was just a personal question, but in my opinion, I've kind of noticed that maybe it's just from my perspective, in because I come from Zambia,
Hmm.
and I think there's been quite a lot of buzz with regards to fintech.
Mm.
I think that's because of the mobile money success that's occurred. Do you think that maybe this focus on fintech is maybe distracting or maybe taking away potential uh potential innovative solutions? Because when it comes to like fintech, I think people see, I think, the amount of money that Airtel and these other organizations have made from that. I think from Kenya it should be in peso or something like that. And it's like, I don't know if it's possible to replicate that uh situation. So would you say that it's kind of taking away from the potential solutions that could be offered as well?
Uh, I mean, not really, because
Hmm.
I mean, you could have some solutions that could be adapted, and you could have some cross usage, for instance, in innovative financing, crowdfunding platforms or whatever fintech solutions that comes here that could help farmers getting finance or getting access to more finance. But beyond that, like actually a fintech not or someone behind a fintech creating a solution that addresses problems in a farm, it all depends on the person. I mean, again,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one thing that we've noticed is like if people are trying to get money and like their
Mm-hmm.
objective is just to get rich, doesn't work very well in agriculture. I mean, it's a
Mm.
slow business, it's
Yep.
very, very, very painstaking. And so if their
Yep.
objective from the get-go is to make money, I mean, they're not going to go far. So yeah, they actually need to find a solution that
Mm-hmm.
meets their customers or their targeted customers' problems. And yeah, again, it's not an industry where you're going to make millions and billions.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I don't see where that could have like some impact on like how. I mean, in a sense, yeah, it could have impact because the talent,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're young. I mean, when you're young, you want to create something, you want to make money, and that's normal. It's,
Yeah.
you know, it's not bad. Um, but if you create a business for the sole purpose of just creating wealth for like for yourself, then I don't think that
Maybe
that's.
agriculture is not the right space, right?
Sorry?
I was saying maybe agriculture is not the right space for somebody that's thinking about just simply making
Yeah.
money in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are easier ways, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And moving on, um, sorry, 1 second. We've seen some agri-tech ventures take off and then quickly lose momentum. Based on your experience reporting on this space, what are some common pitfalls and misconceptions founders should avoid? And I think you already mentioned one of them, which is really not understanding the problem
Yeah.
at hand. Are there any other common pitfalls that, and speaking as somebody that wants to start something in Africa, what are some of the common pitfalls that you see?
Yeah. Thinking that you're a tech company in Silicon Valley,
Mm.
uh, that's also a common misconception. You're not a tech
Mhm.
company. I mean, you are a tech company, but you shouldn't get that Silicon Valley mindset of like, I'm gonna create a product and then prove my concept and then raise capital and then raise another capital when I need it and then do that until you get acquired by a bigger company. That really doesn't work in agriculture. Um,
Sorry to
farmers,
interrupt, but don't you think that that sort of mindset is fueled by the? I think there's been sort of this increase in the number of like funders and VCs and that sort of a thing, and it seems to me that like that's sort of the idea that like is
yeah,
pushed, young. I think I read an article once that stated that people are more willing to fund a young person doing a startup below the age of 30,
yeah.
yet people who are 40 years old and doing a startup actually have a higher chance of being more successful because they. So do you think that this, push to, kind of have more startups and that sort of thing kind of promotes that mindset of like, hey, I might be the next Mark Zuckerberg with agriculture. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's part of culture today.
Hmm.
When you're young, you create a startup and then yeah, you go out about your business. And in some regards, that's good because, I'm all for people trying out and taking their chances and taking risks, but also, and sometimes, some people are just not fit for creating companies. That's just a hard truth.
Hmm. Hmm.
It is hard. It is extremely hard. And in agriculture, it's even harder.
Hmm.
I mean, it's painstaking. Things are slow. Getting new clients. I mean, I was gonna talk about the fact that for a tech company, for a traditional tech company, you're gonna ask for a proof of concept. In farming, people are gonna ask for a proof of concept at scale.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
ask you, okay, does it work? Cool.
Hmm.
Does it work on 1 acre, on 10 acres, on 100 acre, on
Hmm.
1,000 acres? And that's, what makes it challenging is that people want to see the solution scaling, and they just don't want a biological product, for instance, just to name that works at 95% efficacy or 95% efficacy on 1 acre. They want it on 100 acres on all their field.
Mm.
And God knows how many biological products have been released over the years where, okay, it works on 95% efficacy rates on 10 acres maybe, but on 100 acres it drops to 80% or
Wow. Yeah.
75%.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's massive. That's a
Hmm.
lot. I mean, again, it's a fine margin industry. You're
True.
just a 1 or even like a 1 or 2% difference in prices. Sometimes
It's
it's the difference
huge.
between
It's
making
huge.
profit or not.
Yeah.
Point.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that for me, yeah, that's
So
the
base yeah, so misunderstanding the problem at hand, and then also I guess you would summarize the second point as um let me see, as sort of overvaluing the idea that you have, maybe. I guess I could say. Or should I say overestimating the potential of the idea?
yeah, or relying too much on external funding or external
Mm-hmm.
help.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that could
Maybe
be a way of
Yeah, maybe
summarizing.
if we could actually talk about that, because I think there is that idea, especially from African entrepreneurs, about funding. So you say
Yeah.
that like this over reliance on funding is actually a negative. So then, how do you think people should go about that? Is the idea to start at a very small scale and then start expanding at a very slow rate, or are there any other ideas that you might think of?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about starting where you can, essentially, and
Mm-hmm.
then taking baby steps. And along the way, you're gonna find partners and you're gonna find people that are gonna help you and that are gonna help you take that leap of faith, essentially, and take that second step or that third step
Mm-hmm.
or that bigger step, essentially. And some of the most successful startups or companies that we've seen started out very small, like sometimes in a garage with, very little to no money, just their time invested, and yeah, that's all they had to offer, and maybe their laptop or
Yeah.
iPhone or whatever
Yeah.
to code or something.
Mhm.
But most of the times, these are the most successful companies because they started slow, they got the foundations right, and then they started building and they started
Mhm.
adding, yes, the venture capital money, and they
Mhm.
started scaling, and eventually they built this beautiful house that is their business. But
Yeah.
again, if the foundations are bad, then the house is not going to stand
Yeah.
very
Not
long,
constant. Yeah.
anyways. And so it's always important. And I know it's tempting. I mean, I'm young as well.
Yeah.
Uh, and sometimes it's tempting to just go out the VC route and raise capital and so on. But at the same time, you need to have a proven business model that is scalable,
Mhm.
especially in this industry. I mean, it's very hard to pivot if you have an issue. And sometimes I see companies, they're like, yeah, we're going to create this technology and so on. However, the farmers will need to increase their price. I'm like, no, well,
Right.
that's never going
Mhm.
to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an issue. And so they need to create this step by step, going step by step. And then I know it's slow at the beginning, but then
Yeah.
eventually it increases and yeah, you can add that VC money afterwards. So
Oh, okay.
yeah.
And do you think that I think we had a very innovative farmer in Zambia called Bruno Mwemba on our
Mhm.
podcast, and one of the things he was discussing was but he was speaking more in terms of NGOs with regards to coming into African countries and sort of having policies and frameworks and implementing them, and they sometimes don't have they have mixed results. And he was talking about how there's mismatch again between people in the West and other countries that kind of come in with these ideas, but they have no clue of the local context. Do you think that that also exists with venture capitalists and funders with regards to the problems at hand?
Yeah, I mean, VCs want to see sometimes a 2 or 3 times return within 7 years.
Well, yeah.
So that in a farm is pretty much impossible.
Hmm. Hmm.
And for a tech company, it's very complicated to achieve, even
Hmm.
for a solution provider. So yeah, that's something that people come up with is that they see what's happening, for instance, on the news, on the media, and I'm part of the media, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I know a few things.
Yeah.
But they see what's happening, they see these hundreds of millions and these billions and so on thrown away, and they think like, yeah, that's attainable and achievable. And I hope so. I hope for them.
Hmm.
But like, again, be realistic, study the market, do your homework. Essentially,
Hmm.
it's all about doing your homework, understanding what problems you're trying to solve. And once you understood those problems, then creating all the infrastructure around it so that your end users or your customers actually can benefit from the whole, um, from the entire, how can you say this? From the entire benefits of
Hmm.
your solution. If you're just selling them the new product or the technology and with nothing behind it, that is doomed to fail, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's also another great point. And I guess we've talked a lot about, the private sector and touched a little bit on the state. So I think my final question would be, what do you think African states should do with regards to, promoting uh better startups that are more focused on the problems, and also providing a room for startups to sort of grow? Are there any countries that you've seen that are really leading the charge in this regard? And if you could just tell some examples of that.
Yeah, I mean, on a personal note, I'm never a fan when governments get
Mm,
involved in the business, in
yeah,
any business.
yeah,
That's just my own humble opinion.
yeah.
But in terms of countries where they invest a lot in the infrastructure and making the infrastructure suitable for new technologies, um, you got countries like Kenya, for instance,
Hmm.
where you got many, many projects and a few tech companies. Ghana is also another country that a few people talk about. And then I would say, um, yeah, Nigeria is still also a big
Yeah,
country with a lot of
yeah,
potential. I mean, they have their own issues right now,
yeah.
but it's still there is a lot of potential, and in some areas of the country, there is the infrastructure to create a tech company or at least an ag tech company. So I would, yeah, but again, I'm never a fan when governments get
It's
involved in
yeah, yeah,
businesses.
yeah.
Uh, I'm more of, yeah, letting companies do their own thing, build on their own, and then scaling on their own, and just governments providing the right infrastructure, the roads, the internet, the energy grid
Hmm.
as well, so that they can, yeah, operate as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, you're definitely right. And I think I like the fact that you mentioned energy, because I think that's another thing that's been a headache, especially for us, because it's like we don't only have to create a solution, but we also have to think about the solution when there's no power and that sort of a thing. Yeah. So I think that's a good place to end it, actually. If do you have any other links that may or anything where people can find you? Or I think you mentioned the podcast that you do as well, and anything else that you'd like to other people to maybe come and find you.
Yeah, people can read on igronews.com
Hmm.
the latest news. They can follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram. We've also recently launched a network called the iGrow Network, where we connect startups with potential partners, investors, clients as well throughout the world. So they can go ahead and meet us there at network.igrownews.com.
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you very much, Sepehr. And yeah, to all of the listeners, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I am an African.